You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
يلمين هناك لشوارزنيجر
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
2.5 months ago, Kevin and I were freezing our butts off at BMO Field watching the MLS Cup final. Seattle fans will remember that fondly. Toronto fans will remember that coldly. However, less than 3 months later, here we are, ready to talk about 2017 Major League Soccer. Merry Christmas, Kevin. It's opening day.
It's crazy. March 3rd, 2017. We are here. It's now. It's the present. Games are starting. One tonight and the rest to follow in the weekend. I'm still like, I can realize that it's today. I have to pinch myself. I have to make sure that it's like an overload. My system is overloading right now.
Well, it is. It's exciting. Well, in many ways, I realized this about halfway through last night, that it kind of started last night with the New York Red Bulls and the Vancouver Whitecaps playing the second leg of the CCL. A little different, but nonetheless, because they both played kind of first choice lineups out there. It did seem like the season actually started watching that game last night. And for Whitecaps fans, it was a good start to the season, a good start for the season for Canadian club fans, if you're fans of all the club teams, with the 2-0 win, including, excitingly, an all-Canadian goal to launch this forward, De Jong to the Wunderkind. Hype train's on, guys. We should make a hype train, Alphonso Davies hype train bumper. I just fully embrace this now. Screw it. He's our dude. Let's just do this. Let's just do it right this time.
Ado 2.0 Canadian style. Alphonso Davies. I hadn't had a chance to watch that game. What was so impressive to you about Alphonso Davies? We know we talked about his age. We've been talking about him maybe for a year now. His age, but we were always impressed by his size, by his what seemed to be power and strength, which is weird because he might be tall and really skilled, but at 15, 16 years old now, the strength, the power usually is the one thing that needs to come further with training, gym time. He seems to have it already.
I'll give you a couple anecdotes. For first one, an exchange on Twitter, and I actually screen captured it and tweeted it last night, between Giles Barnes and our friend Kristen Henage. Kristen Henage said that he believed that Davies was immensely talented, and it was only a matter of time until someone found a way to get him to a bigger club in Europe, which might not make Whitecaps fans happy, but will make Canadian national team fans happy, assuming he will get there. I'm going to get to that point in a minute. Responding to that was Giles Barnes, who of course has trained with him and is a professional. And his response was, and the scary thing is, we haven't even seen half of it yet. So this is a professional backing up a journalist that has, a respected journalist's opinion to say that this kid is for real. And there's a lot of people out there that are reluctant to embrace the idea that he has immense talent, that this is a player that's not just like exciting, quote unquote, for a Canadian. He's exciting for a player, period, anywhere in the world. And that's something that I think we're going to have to wrap our head around. He may have a higher ceiling than Kyle Lauren, who is, I think, already the highest ceiling that we've ever seen a Canadian player have in terms of attacking power in a long time.
7 years or close to it, I believe. Less than that. But he's so ahead of where Kyle Lauren was at his age. It's not even comparable. And that is partly due to academies, professional academies, Edmonton, and let's not forget about Edmonton in that story. Edmonton and Vancouver side. It's about that, and deciding to go early with the professional route and give it a all-in type of shot for him, and like it's this or nothing. And look at the progression that he had, like you mentioned, finally we have a Canadian, but I'll even say North American player that's following the blueprint age-wise of great players in Spain, of great players in France and England. The development side, it's very similar. Raheem Sterling debuted at 17 for Liverpool, but guess what? Davies debuted at 15 for Vancouver.
All right. Real quickly, you did mention Edmonton, and I had an exchange last night with Jeff Paulus, who is the academy director for FC Edmonton, about Davies, and he did actually modestly want me to say this. So I'm going to read exactly what he wrote to me. He said, "I think there's been a lot of talk of Alfonso developing with this, and I just need to clarify that he really only spent time as a guest with the academy. That's what he wanted to clarify. I also need to add what he has is 100% natural, and nobody should be claiming his development. This kid spent hours as a youth with friends in the park or at Commonwealth Fieldhouse, and he is really the only one who can claim development for his, or claim credit for his own development." So that's a very modest and I think respectful sort of response from the FC Edmonton academy director, who was one of the first people in the world to see this kid up close at a young age. So Edmonton did play a role, but Jeff just wanted us to I don't know, he wanted us to downplay that a little bit, again, modestly speaking, but I did get that out for him. The other point I wanted to make, you asked me what was impressive about him, and the goal, obviously, and the patience in front of Nat was incredible for a man that young. Like most kids his age would have just blasted it into the defender, but he had the wherewithal to delay and to wait and take a little shift to the left and then pick the corner out in the first goal in the 5 minutes, which effectively at that point put New York on the back heel for the rest of the game. But there was a play in the second half, and if you watch the game, you'll know what I'm talking about, which he's at a full sprint down the wing, and he is fouled, and he flies over the top of the player, and he lands, and in one fell swoop, immediately jumps back up and continues on the run after doing basically a backflip over the defender. And that, to me, was the single most athletic thing I have seen a Canadian footballer do ever. And I just started laughing when you see that. I just wish I could be that athletic just for 1 second once in my life. You know
I
what
just
I mean?
want to do it once. Let me do that backflip once, please.
Yeah, exactly. And he just kept running, and he unfortunately had a full point blank shot on goal, but he tried to curl it around the keeper who was charging out at him, and he hit it a little off, and it went straight out rather than curl it all. But nonetheless, the athleticism up to that will be the play. I mean, talking to a few people last night, what he needs to work on is his first touch. We've seen it a few times in the two games that sometimes it will betray him a little bit. But that athleticism is just so pure, and he's only 16. It's only going to get better. He's not a man yet, and that's the incredible thing about it. He'll play a full year in Vancouver, I think, but I suspect that you will see him move on sooner rather than later in terms of his development moving forward, because Vancouver, look, I mean, he's a great talent for them, but if somebody comes running and offering them $10 million or $5 million even in a year or so.
Let's go 10, at least 10. Why not? He's worthy.
Exactly. That's going to be a lot of money that they can use to fuel a lot of stuff moving forward. And that, there are other ways you can replace him. If he were to stay in MLS and develop for 5, 6, 7 years, by the time he got to Lauren's age, he would absolutely be matching what he's doing. In fact, having watched him play last night, if he gets consistent minutes and, get that hype train bumper going, that kid could get 10 goals this year, and as a 16-year-old, Major League Soccer, and that's incredible. And I also tweeted out last night, if he does get 10 goals, it's going to be a bloody shame that he can't get the Rookie of the Year. I know he played a couple games last year, but really, this is his first fully professional season at Major League Soccer's level. And if he were to score 10 goals and not get an award for that, then I think MLS needs to look at finding a new award, the Young Player of the Year or something, that they can sort of address that kind of thing for. As the academy systems evolve, the Rookie of the Year being restricted to college players. You could call it like the incoming College Player of the Year award or something, and have a Newcomer of the Year or Young Player of the Year award as well.
True. But so the result 2-0 for Vancouver yesterday. On Wednesday, we had Arabe Unido Duane 2-1 versus FC Dallas in the second leg, and Pumas and Tigres 3-0 for Tigres on the road. Vancouver moving on in the Champions League, going to the semifinal. Is it the beginning of a run for Vancouver?
No. Tigres Tigres is pretty damn good, and it's going to be a tough one for them. And in fact, Pachuca Tigres is your likely CCL final, but we'll see what Dallas can do. They have the better chance, obviously, the slightly better draw, although Pachuca's having a fairly decent season. But I would be hesitant to bet against an all-Mexican final at this point based on the way the bracket is played out. The Whitecaps were full marks for beating the Red Bulls. The other side of the story, real quickly, before we take a break and get into our prediction show, because we have a lot to get to today. The other side of the story is the Red Bulls. And look, Cullen looks like he might be done. I mean, I know it's early, but he has looked horrible in the back. That back line was just a disaster all game. Not having Dax there to sort of balance things and to sort of solidify things. I don't know whether the Red Bulls might not have made a major mistake, because they did not look very good. They did not look very organized. Bradley Wright Phillips wasn't able to poach any goals. If he's not poaching, if Kleshton's not really able to pull that string without Dax behind him this year, then it's possible that the Red Bulls might have taken a step back for a year. They're going to need to add in the summer. And I think that's probably something that, if you listen to the interview that Jesse Marsh did with Extra Time Radio this week, that he did mention that he did highly hint that they would be adding an impact DP in the summer. They might need to speed that up if they can, because right now they don't look very good, Kevin. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, and we're going to jump into 3 things that absolutely will and 3 things that absolutely won't happen in the 2017 Major League Soccer season.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back. Really tonight, Minnesota-Portland. Who you got? Minnesota v. Portland. Quick. That's our first prediction.
Minnesota.
Oh, Portland 6, Minnesota 0.
Wow. 6-0. Wait, yeah, that's bold too.
Yeah, it's a hot take. It's a hot take show. They probably won't lose 6-0, but I tried to sign up for MLS Fantasy this morning, and it frustrated the hell out of me because I couldn't figure out how to set. Like, I picked my players, but I couldn't figure out how to set my lineup, and then I lost all my players, and now I'm like, yeah, screw it, because I'll forget to play it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was trying to pick a lot of Portland players, so there you go. And apparently, you can switch out your team every week this year, which I think is dumb.
Wow.
I don't want a fantasy game that I have to pay attention to every week. MLS, if you're listening, I want a fantasy team that I can pick once, and that will be the team for the year.
No, but you have to pick your starters. You're not. Yeah, it's way too involved. Way too much daily involvement in the fantasy. I don't know. I have a few hours left to think if I'm gonna do the plunge or not, and it's leaning towards not. But Duane, let's start with 3 things that will definitely happen in the 2017 season in MLS.
All right, I will start. We'll go. We'll rotate. So the first thing that I think is absolutely going to happen in 2017. And I'm going to start out in Vancouver, and I apologize to Carl Robinson and I apologize to the Vancouver Whitecaps, but I believe that in 2017, Carl Robinson will lose his job, that he will be a fired manager, because I think the Whitecaps are going to struggle again. We're going to get to that in a minute. I know that they had a good result last night, but I do think they're going to struggle again. And I think that Carl Robinson will be the person who is sacrificed. So my first prediction of 3 things that will happen in 2017 is that Carl Robinson will no longer be the manager of the Vancouver Whitecaps.
My first thing that I can say that will happen in 2017 is the Chicago Fire will win more games than the last few seasons. I believe they will be higher in the standings than the last place in the table. That will for sure happen in 2017.
Yeah, a lot of people are sort of picking Chicago as sort of a dark horse, I guess, as a playoff team. I don't know if I'm quite ready to go there yet. You'll have to wait and see to the next block, but certainly I do think that they have to be better, and they didn't quite have 2 historically bad seasons like Toronto did in a row, where they finished sub 30 2 years in a row. No team has ever done that. 2012, 2013, TFC, the worst stretch in MLS history. But they came close. They were 2 sub-35 point seasons, and that's not very good either. So I think it only can go up for the Fire from there. All right, moving on to the second thing that I think will happen, and this does speak to the bottom, and kind of who I'm thinking when I say this, but I'll extend it to perhaps another team as well in that mix. I think that this year we'll see another. Remember the 2013 DC United, how bad they were? I think we're going to see another sub-20 team, a sub-20 point team this year. It's either going to be Minnesota or Houston in my mind. I just have a feeling that with the way MLS is changing nowadays, that there is a bigger split. The parity thing isn't as normal as it was in the past. It isn't as across the board as it is in the past. It's still a parity league, but I do think that there is a potential for at least one team having a really bad season this year and just being way off the pace of everyone else, just based on the strength at the top that exists nowadays. And I think I'm belaboring and beating them to death at this point. I think it's going to be Minnesota, but I would also put Houston in that mix as well. And so I do think we're going to have a sub-20 point season amongst at least one Major League Soccer team in 2017.
Another thing that will for sure happen in 2017, an expansion team will make the playoffs in their inaugural season. Maybe you know who I'm talking about. We'll see later on. But I feel like one expansion team will definitely make the playoffs in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, there's 12 out of 22 teams make the playoffs. So that's the bar that we're talking about here. And I really still hate the fact that it's 12. I still think it should be 8 at the most. But nonetheless, it is 12. Yeah, we'll see where I peg them. I'm not as high on them as others. Of course, talking about Minnesota. At any rate, no. I'm not as high on them as others. We'll get to that in a second. All right. The final thing that I have that definitely will happen, and this is sit down. Everyone needs to sit down right now, okay? This is going to be shocking. This is the hottest of hot takes, Kevin. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
In 2017, absolutely, 100%, Josie Altidore will be hurt at some point. I know. That's a shocking prediction. But I am willing to put my neck out that Josie Altidore will be injured at some point in 2017. Oh, God, I don't know. I'm nervous right now having put that out there, Kevin. Nervous.
Well, it's a good one. And my last one, it's in 2 parts. First part is, you know what? In 2017, I guarantee you, I put all my life's earning on the fact that one team will win the MLS Cup in 2017. Not saying who, but a team will win. In reality, I'm saying we will have another Canadian team going deep in the playoffs. You got your choice. There's 3. But I feel like in 2017, there will be one Canadian team in the MLS Cup finals.
Okay, well, yeah, that's not. You're not alone in that prediction. Although maybe you might be a homer and pick your own team, in which case
I'm not saying
biased,
who yet. I'm not saying who yet. We're not there yet. This is the beginning. Yeah. I'm just saying one Canadian team will guarantee. It's my guarantee, Duane. I have 3 outs, but there's one that will go deep.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right. The other side of this is 3 things that definitely will not happen in 2017. So I guess I will start. In 2017, I am going to guarantee you right now that we will definitely not see, despite there will be rumors. There will be rumors all year. They will be astronomical rumors that make no sense whatsoever. And the reason they'll make no sense whatsoever is because they won't happen and they won't be real. There will not be a transfer, a big money transfer from MLS to the Chinese Premier League in 2017. That is my guarantee to you, that there will be no Chinese poaching of Major League Soccer stars in 2017. Might happen the other way, but there won't be any Chinese poaching of MLS stars in 2017, Kevin.
Another thing, or another player that won't finish the season in 2017, Pirlo. I do not feel. My guarantee is that basically he won't finish the season. So will Pirlo finish the season with New York City FC? No, he won't. The calling of the beach, like we saw on Instagram just a few weeks ago, will be maybe calling a little harder, a little more enticing to go, and maybe the answer will come this summer to leave a space on the roster for a big name for NYCFC, because I do feel they will need some help down the road. So Pirlo won't finish the season for New York
All
City
right,
FC.
so we're talking about a mid-season retirement for Andrea Pirlo. Maybe he'll go out against I don't know what would be a marquee game for him to go out of the Derby, I guess, and he walks off into the sunset, having played in the historic Hudson River Derby. That'd be something to see. There is to take that seriously a little bit more for a second. What you just said is bang on in terms of why that would be an advantage to Malo. The money that they would pay into his DP salary up until the halfway season would come off their cap, it still would open up a DP slot for them. So that might be something they need to look at if things aren't going well. All right. The second thing that definitely will not happen this year, in my opinion, in 2017, is there will not be a Bruce Arena hangover in LA. I believe that the transition for the Galaxy is going to be smooth. I think that in some ways it might even benefit the Galaxy a little bit more to move on from Arena. Not that I'm dismissing Arena's skills or abilities or success, obviously, as a Major League Soccer manager. I just think that maybe the way that this happened with him stepping into the role of the U.S. national team coach, allowing them to bring some new blood in there, some new ideas into that front office, is something that might allow the Galaxy to evolve in a way that they wouldn't have been able to unless he was there. So I don't think we're going to see any hangover whatsoever for the Galaxy. And in fact, we may even see a slight bump. It's hard to get a big bump when you're the Galaxy because they're always pretty good. But I do think that the Galaxy will just continue to tick on, and the post-Arena years will be just as bright for Galaxy fans as the Arena years were, Kevin.
One thing that won't happen in 2017 is Real Salt Lake making the playoffs. It won't happen. It'll be a difficult time at the Riot in 2017. Real Salt Lake, a stable of MLS 1.5, 2.0, we could say, just to mark the era, but it will hit hard this year, just like when you're going downhill on a ski slope and that tree is coming really fast. That's how the 2017 season will go down. It's the tree. Real Salt Lake will be stopped in their quest for the 2017 playoffs and won't make the playoffs.
All right, quick prediction. Toronto FC RSL tonight or tomorrow. Who wins?
Toronto.
You think Toronto's going to win the first game of the season?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go with the one. I'm going to go with the one draw. It is on the road, and they've always had trouble in Sandy, but in sexy Sandy, as they call it in the local minority. All right. My final thing that definitely will not happen in 2017, and this is a two-pronged answer. This goes for two teams. I do not believe there will be an MLS Cup hangover in 2017. Both of the teams that were in the MLS Cup final, for different reasons, are going to succeed and are going to have solid years again. We'll see where we peg both of them when we do the rankings in a second and the overall predictions at the end. But I do not believe that either Toronto FC or Seattle are going to struggle in the way that Portland or Columbus did. You got to remember that Portland and Columbus were both kind of surprising teams to get there. Columbus less so. Columbus had a really strange year in 2016, and we'll get to them in a minute, I think. But I don't, if you look at Seattle and bringing Ladero in, you look at TFC across the board and their strength, it's not the same team. And to put the same sort of measures and same sort of expectations on them as like a Portland team that came out of nowhere to make the MLS Cup final and to win it, it doesn't make sense. It's not the same. It's a different scenario, and evaluating these two teams on their own merits right now, I just don't see a hangover or a bump down for either one of them in the short term or the long term in 2017. So no MLS Cup hangover in 2017. That is something that definitely will not happen. Wait, that was a double negative, but you know what I mean.
Yes. My number one thing that will not happen in 2017. I tried to find it, but I can't, so there's no drum roll. There was supposed to be one, but if there was a drum roll, it would be playing right now. TFC will not win the MLS Cup in 2017.
All right, well, that's, not that big of a prediction since there's 21 teams out there that could otherwise, but okay. The Montrealer has picked that Toronto won't be successful.
No, I didn't say it won't be successful. They're not going to win the whole thing.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll have to get to my final predictions at the end, whether I pick them or not. And there are, Dallas. We got LA. You've got lots of teams in there that could also Seattle again. That are worthwhile picks to pick the Major League Soccer's championship trophy. But we'll see. All right. We got. Let's take a break now. Kevin will come back. We're going to actually rank the teams 11-1 in each conference. We'll go backwards right after this break.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS post-game show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome back. Time for predictions. It's time for it to get out there. This is the part. Save this tweet. Wait, this isn't a tweet. Save this podcast.
Save this show.
Save this show.
Hashtag save the show. Send your money at patreon.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
There you go. All right, what we're going to do is we'll go east, then west. We'll go 11. We'll start with the 11, then 10, then 9. There's 11 teams in both conferences this year, so we'll do it that way. We'll talk like a few minutes. We have a lot of teams to go through, so we're not going to talk a ton on each team, but we'll talk a little bit about our justification for where we put them. So I'll put mine out there, then Kevin will put his out there. Obviously we might talk about Orlando twice because I might rank them at whatever, and Kevin's going to rank them higher or lower, right? So that's how this is going to work. All right, let's just jump in because we got a lot of teams to get through here, and we'll start in the East and then go to the West.
Yeah.
The number 11 team, Kevin, in the East, my ranking for the last place team in the East this year. This might catch a few people off guard a little bit, but I believe that last year's playoff darlings, upset playoff team, the Philadelphia Union, will finish with the Eastern Wooden Spoon. They still don't have the depth. I think it was too much of a luck season last year. They relied too much on a young center back. Then we saw what happened when he got hurt. They're just too precarious in my mind, Kevin. So Philadelphia Union, 11th in the East.
Well, we start on the same side because I agree with you on that position. Philly, 11th. Sophomore slump, is it a thing? We'll see. We'll see how Keegan reacts to this year. It is not just about one player either. We'll see how the whole team reacts. A lot of splash, a lot of cash, a lot of signing in the offseason throughout the Eastern Conference. Truly, I believe the quality of the Eastern Conference has risen in this past offseason. Did Philly catch that wave or were they caught off guard? I believe it's the latter, and 11th is my spot for the Philadelphia Union as well.
All right, so Kevin and I agree with the last place finisher in the East. It will be a team, an established team. It won't be the expansion team, I guess is what we're saying there. The team that really hasn't had a great launch since they came into the league, only a couple playoff appearances, a very short one last year. That's moved to the West. The 11th place finisher in the West. Okay, look, I'm not even going to play this up because you know exactly who I'm picking for 11th in the West. It's Minnesota. I think they're terrible. If I'm wrong, I apologize to Minnesota fans. I'm not bashing them. I'm observing, and I'm terrified for them. I think it's going to be a long year in Minnesota, a very long year. I'm picking them last in the West and last overall in the league for the record.
And my prediction for 11th in the West is the San Jose Quakes. The Quakes, they're terrible. They were terrible last year. A very questionable direction of their identity as a soccer team. Difficulty with they need to fill that stadium. Stadium is beautiful. They need to take advantage of making it a fortress. The Goonies have long been forgotten at this point. The aura, the invincibility they had late in games, that clear identity, like we talked to Paul earlier this week, is long gone now. And they need clearly any direction. And one thing that will happen, and I forgot to mention because we only have 3, didn't have 5, Dominic Kinnear will be one of those casualties, I feel, in 2017. ever since he came back from the Houston Dynamo to the Quakes, he was with the Quakes before. The Quakes moved to Houston. He stayed there. Then he got eventually fired, 4 or 5 years after by Dynamo, and went back to the Earthquakes just a few years ago, right after. But it never been successful. And is Chris Wondolowski and that core of player still the answer to where the league is going? My answer is no, in 11th for the Quakes in the Western Conference.
There's going to come a year where Wando stops scoring. It hasn't happened yet, but
it
might have.
He had a peak. Like when he tied Roy Lasser's record, what was it, 2013?
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah,
I think so. Or similar, like give or take a year or two. When he tied it, that was the peak of his goal scoring, and it's been diminishing returns since then, and it never was replicated. And a lot of those goals were in a we don't want to say fluke fashion, but hardly replicatable, which if you want to take it for year to year consistency basis, this is hard to quantify. And that's why there was a peak in that year. Everything was going well. Everything was going great. He could do no wrong. And there was a constant growth before that, slowly but surely with that peak. And now it's been diminishing return. So those questions have not been answered on the roster by the Quakes, and I feel like they're going to struggle this year in the Western Conference even more than Minnesota. So the Quakes are 11th for me.
All right, jumping on to the East, back to the East for the 10th place team there. Rob Stone is going to be happy or not. I don't know which, but I'm picking the New England Revolution to continue their downward spiral.
Talk about hot takes. I agree with you.
There you go. So we agree on the East so far. New England with the 10th place finish. They're an MLS 1.0 team still, an MLS 3.0, and they just continue to sort of flounder on. They have occasional blips. Like any MLS team will find lightning in a bottle in a given season, but I just don't see any direction there, Kevin. And they know who the hell is going to play center. They have 2 new center halves coming in. That is a disaster waiting to happen. That is TFC 1.0 thinking there. Oh, we'll just bring some new guys in and surely to God, this will be different. No, at least one of them is not going to work, and it's going to be the same deal. It's going to be a long year in Boston. Thank God, because Boston has enough and every other sport, but sorry for the soccer crowd.
All right. I'll go to the Western Conference because we agree on the East. Western Conference, on my side, number 10. We talked about the Quakes. Let's talk about the Zombie Quakes. Let's talk about the formerly known team as the Quakes, the team formerly known as the Earthquakes, the Houston Dynamo. I feel they're not addressing the situation as well. The Cubo Torres fire, all that situation surrounding the roster. They're gearing towards a more Latino-based players roster to attract fans from the area. We'll see how that goes this year. We'll see if this team can gel in time with Wade Barrett, the coach. Can they actually pull it off this season? I don't think so. And I feel the Houston Dynamo are one of the worst teams in the league, like the Quakes and like the Revs in Philly. Houston, number 10 for me.
Yeah, you called them the zombie Earthquakes. I'm quoting Zombie Chivas. They start the league next year. I was the first to call the Chivas USA the zombies, so I'm trademarking that. But nonetheless, once the sort of Earthquakes players that came in during that era sort of started to retire and get old, that team went from powerhouse to kind of mediocre to now they're also ran. I have them at 10th as well. As you say, the direction's an issue. I mean, they went with Owen Coyle last year. That almost seemed like a desperation move to change kind of their whole model. And then, Kinnear was there for years, that kind of straight ahead, we're going to be hard to play in the playoff stuff. That's MLS 2.0 thinking. This is a team that really needs to find its direction. They're getting bypassed in their own state by Dallas. I think maybe they're a little bit taken aback by that. I don't like the idea of trying to pander to a certain type of player for your market. Whenever you start doing that, nothing good's going to come out of it. Not a team, the forever orange, but forever blushing red maybe this year, because it's going to be a long year in Houston. They're the other team that I think could finish with less than 20 points. Wow. I think they're that poor. We'll see what happens though. Yeah, all right.
Exactly. And just funny, because we mentioned Minnesota, but there was a very funny exchange on Twitter with yourself and I forgot who, talking about your prediction of under 20, but even maybe under 10 for Minnesota.
Yes. Yeah, the 55 guys. That's how I ended up wagering $50 to a charity. I picked Right to Play, which is one of my favorite charities out there. So if Minnesota fit, and we ended up settling on 24.5 points. So I got a few more points out of it. But if Minnesota finishes with less than 25 points, it was Rob from the show the other day, we'll donate $50 to Right to Play. If they exceed 25 points, I will donate $50 to. It was a local charity in Minnesota. Forgive me for not knowing it off the top of my head, but they do good work helping disadvantaged kids play sports, basically. So both kind of similar charities, and whatever. There's going to be a winner regardless, obviously, in this wager at the end of the year. But that was the wager we had there. Let's move to the East, Kevin. Orlando is my ninth pick.
Jesus.
So we're still the same. Okay, there you go.
Orlando for me too. Well, why do you put Orlando in ninth? We'll see if we have the same reason. I think
that they're stripping things down to try and build back up in crisis vision, and it's going to be a rebuilding year. I think this is by design less than in the past years. They still have a lot of dead weight on that roster that's going to make it difficult for them to rebuild quickly. So it's almost like, to use the Toronto example, it's almost like Toronto in 2013, which wasn't as bad as 2012 in the sense that they were starting to strip things down then to trying to change the way that they were looking at things. And then they really did that in full force in 2014. So I think that Orlando under Christ might be able to get things going the right way, but I believe it's going to take at least a year, and he's going to get that time. Jason Christ is not under any pressure, and he's able to sort of lose for a year so that he can get rid of the bad contracts and starts fresh again, which is absolutely what's going to be needed there. They did not launch correctly when you look at it in hindsight. Brought in a lot of sort of like friends of Kaká that did not work out and have really handicapped that team with the bad contracts. So,
speaking of Kaká, I feel he's one of the dead weights that you were talking about. Like, yeah, there's only so much you can do, and now you strip off Molino, you add Will Johnson. Is Will Johnson going to be the link between Kaká and Lauren and the rest of the team to give the ball to service up front? You take out a Molino, which was the key in that equation, not a Kaká. Kaká is the flashy point. He can still do stuff when you have the ball, but he's not going to track back box to box, work hard in the dead heat of the summer all year long. So a lot of questions still with that roster of Orlando, and that's why I put them ninth. I put them ninth, closer to 10th than to 8th. Like 9 because the other two teams behind will be very bad as well, not because like they could be 11th on a different year. This year I feel there's going to be a few very, very bad teams in the Eastern Conference, 3, and the rest will be closer to the playoff spot where we're going to get to slowly. But I do feel that for me, Orlando is ninth, and ninth as in 1 or 2 points off the 10th position.
All right, let's flip to the West, and I'll let you shoot first.
Real Salt Lake. It will be a shock. It will be a shocker. Reality hits hard sometime, and 2017 will hit like it was 2016 for Real Salt Lake. It will be a tough season. 9th position for them. And again, I feel they're going to be closer to 10th than to 8th. I think there's going to be like a small margin before we talk actually the teams battling for a playoff spot, which my next one in the Western Conference will be, in my opinion, close enough to say that it's a success for their first season, but that's just a teaser. But my 9th in the Western Conference is Real Salt Lake.
There's no way in hell Minnesota's finishing 8th, but we'll get to that in a minute. My 9th pick is San Jose. For me, we've already sort of spoke to them a little bit. I agree with much of what Kevin said. There's a lack of identity there, a lack of direction there. It's hard. They're the forgotten team. Here's a little project. Don't look at anything and just write down every Major League Soccer team. Don't do it now because clearly you'd remember them. But if you just do this on a random day when you're not thinking about them before you start to do it, I guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, San Jose will be that last team, the 22nd team. You're going, who the hell am I forgetting? It will always be San Jose, and it's because they're forgettable. And
I guess everybody forgot the way to San Jose.
Exactly. There you go. All right, so San Jose is my 9th pick. Let's get to the East. I'll start. We are going to differ here, I know, because your predictions in the first part. I am picking Atlanta to finish 8th, and I feel weird that it's almost feels like I'm being contrarian to pick an expansion team to not make the playoffs, but it is because everyone is picking them because they've made a lot of flashy signings. They made some good DP signings. I like some of their signings, but the combination of trying to get all of these new players from a part of the world that doesn't always translate into Major League Soccer success immediately. There are a lot of high-profile South American success stories that we all remember. There are a lot of South American failures that we all forget. So some of these signings aren't going to work. And the other part of this too is that their depth just isn't going to be at the same level as an established team. They're a very good expansion team, but they're very good for an expansion team. So they're not going to be far off the playoffs, Kevin, but they're not, in my opinion. I think that the depth and the familiarity between these players, once the grind of a season starts, I don't care what they look like in the preseason. That doesn't matter. Once the grind of the preseason or the regular season starts, the familiarity and the lack of like depth at every position is going to start to eventually just chip away at their points. And especially in those hot summer months, I just expect that Atlanta will fall off the pace just enough that they will not be a playoff team. They're going to be well set up for the future, but I do not see Atlanta United as a playoff team in 2017. I see them at 8th in the East. Kevin.
My number 8 in the Eastern Conference is the Columbus Crew. I feel that after their terrible season last year, they're not necessarily addressed all the situation, the issues, the big elephant in the room in that club, the way it all unfolded a year and a half ago with the Kaikamar situation, I think is still lingering with this club. At least they fixed the kid situation, back to black and yellow. Gone
the
with
kids are okay this year. They look decent.
Gone with the green. So, but I don't think it's going to be a successful season. Maybe a team that's in the hunt, maybe until the end to make a playoff run, but coming up just short and finishing 8th in the Eastern Conference. Is Higuain going to continue to be either not up to his high standards that he had in his first few seasons with the Columbus Crew? Last year was a little bit of a fluke maybe, but success has not come easily for the Crew, and I feel it won't this year either.
All right. I'm curious to hear why you think Minnesota is going to finish 8th.
You go ahead for a second.
Okay, you want me to go with that? Well, Minnesota I have last, but
no. What's your number 8 in the Western Conference?
My number 8 is RSL. We spoke about RSL a minute ago. Look, it's this transition. This is a theme of our non-playoff teams so far, is that they're teams in transition that don't necessarily have full identities and full rosters to beat that identity yet. RSL, I think, isn't in between. They haven't really figured out how to exist outside of the Christ years. They were, in my opinion, and I'm on record many times saying this, as I thought the most successful MLS 2.0 team out there, just in terms of the overall, by way, what's that, best pound for pound is what I'm trying to say. They were the pound for pound, the best team in Major League Soccer for extension for 5 or 6 years, in my opinion, based on the resources they had and their ability to translate them into success. An MLS Cup championship in 2009, an MLS Cup final in, 2011, I guess. So that's immensely successful for a club of that size. CCL final as well. They're just not able to fully transition into the 3.0 era yet. The Joao Plata DP signing, I think, speaks to that. This is a team that's going to try and do things that sort of bargain way, that sort of Moneyball way. I haven't fully bought into the idea that Moneyball teams will be successful in the third era of Major League Soccer yet. I think RSL still needs to find itself a little bit more. So that is my 8th pick.
Minnesota, for me, will finish 8th, Wayne, because a few experiment will turn out to be not too shabby. Kevin Molino will bring a lot more to the table than people expect, and I do feel that Johan Venegas in his more free, roaming, attacking midfield with an attacking purpose role will turn out really good. I think we will see the Johan Venegas of the Costa Rican national team play for Minnesota. I do feel, we'll talk about Venegas later when we do our player awards, but Venegas is, for me, a key in the success of Minnesota, and it will turn out to be a great addition for the Loons. I feel that Johan Venegas will put between 10 and 20 goals in. Yes, it's a big margin of error, I agree, but closer to the 15 mark. I do feel that Johan Venegas will bring a lot of hope to that team and will keep them not maybe in the playoff picture, but below 10 points off, so they can still have hope that, this happened, and eventually it won't, and they finish 8th. But I think Venegas, as a striker / attacking midfielder free, will bring out a lot of goals and results, and will make Minnesota a better team than people expect, but not necessarily a playoff team either.
Yeah, I've spent too much telling people why I think Minnesota is pretty bad, so I'm not going to continue on that. So we'll see which one of us is right. Let's move on to the East and go 7th place here. Now, My 7th place pick team in the East is the Chicago Fire. Now, this is going to represent a great improvement for the Fire. I don't think they're quite at full playoff stage yet, but I think they're on the right direction. They're making some clever little signings there. I think what they need to do next is they need to make a couple signings that reflect the size of that market. And that's going to be difficult to do because they don't make money. They don't attract right now, but they need to. And I think that's the next stage in this evolution. And if they can add an impact signing in the summer-winter window, let's try that for a third time, a DP level signing, then I think the Fire could be in the mix for the playoffs. They won't be too far off. They finally are going to have a decent season. The Chicago Fire are no longer going to be a tire fire. They're just going to be a bit of smoldering fire that existed on the old Fire this year, Kevin. That's my pick for 7th.
And I agree with you. My pick for 7th is the Chicago Fire as well. Not quite the playoffs, but in the battle for it up until the end. Closest team to be in the playoffs without being in the playoffs will be the Chicago Fire. I think Dax McCarthy will be playing with a very big chip on his shoulder. That will bring out great intensity, but the way they're playing too, if we go back to that famous goal that they had in preseason, that Barcelona-like run of like 1,000 passes and finishing it, if they can correlate that to a better ball possession, not necessarily all season and all game long, because that'll be tough to change from their instincts, but the roster was addressed more, and slowly but surely their move has not been great, like a great game changer move, but they're starting from the bottom and they're just trying to get out of there. And that's what they're going to do this year. They're going to get out of the bottom and finish 7th in the Eastern Conference.
All right, let's move to the West. In my 7th place team in the West, I said it earlier in my 3 things that will happen prediction that Carl Robinson would lose his job this year. The reason I think Carl Robinson is going to lose his job is because the Whitecaps are going to fade down the stretch and are going to finish just outside the playoffs. And 2 seasons in a row outside the playoffs in Vancouver will be too much, and that will be what they may use to make that decision. The reason I think the Whitecaps are not quite there is they're not balanced enough, in my opinion. There's too much sort of talent wide, not enough sort of like grit in the middle. Watson's too much of a wild card. He can be an all-star one day and look like he's the worst player in the league in the next day. You're relying on a 16-year-old early on in the season who I think we talked about in the start of the podcast today that has a brilliant future ahead of him, but he's still only 16. Question marks there. Freddie Montero looked great on the goal. He hit that well. Is he going to get that much space all season? I don't know. Is he going to be as effective as a starter when everyone's healthy and everyone's in full fitness? I don't know. There's question marks there. I don't think they're going to be bad. I don't think they're going to be even as bad as they were last year, but I do think that they will finish just outside the playoffs again. And I believe, against some of the things I've been told by people in Vancouver, that might spell the end for Carl Robinson. So the Whitecaps are my pick for 7th in the West.
My pick for 7th in the West last year, everything went good for Colorado. Everything turned out for the best. Yeah, there was a Tim Howard injury at a bad timing in the playoffs that might have cost them. We'll see. But for now, I think Colorado, it will be difficult for them to replicate the success in this very difficult 2017 season. Yes, there is a weaker teams in the Western Conference because of the expansion, but because of the Quakes and the Dynamo. But I feel it's going to be difficult for Colorado to replicate the success, even to an extent where it's going to be difficult for Colorado to make the playoffs. 7th. They will fail, in my opinion, in their quest for the playoff. Just short, though, in 7th.
All right. Now we move into the playoff positions starting in the East. I almost picked them out of the playoffs, but in the end, I think that there's just enough there in terms of, especially since they seem to figure out the home field advantage at the end of last year, just counting the playoff match where they got it completely wrong. So I think you know what I'm talking about right now. But I don't think they're as good as they were last year when they finished 2nd. But I do think that the NYCFC, the blue half of New York, just have enough, particularly, I think, as I said, that since they seem to have figured out the Yankee Stadium to just sneak in there, particularly if they can add something in the middle of the season to strengthen them, to grab that 6th and final playoff spot again. I'm not sure this is a team that will ever be successful in the playoffs as long as they have that Yankee Stadium situation there, because there's so much disparity between home and away. They played well on the road last year, but yeah, nonetheless, that's where I come down with NYCFC. I think they were a bit of an outlier. Some of the road results last year might have been a little lucky. So that's peg them in for sixth, which is kind of, me hedging my bets in 6 different directions with them. I agree, but nonetheless, that's where I see the citizens of New York finishing in 2017.
A shock. An expansion team making the playoffs, 6th position for Atlanta. Yes,
Will it be a shock?
kind of, but maybe not with the amount of money, the amount of intent, the amount of like homework done.
Ambition,
yeah, but they've done their homework for certain players. They're bringing certain players that can fill out certain roles. Yes, it's a bold prediction because it's an all unproven commodities. We haven't seen this team play a competitive game yet, but on paper, I do feel that it has enough, not just starting 11 qualities, but enough depth to compete to finish mid-table in the Eastern Conference. And being mid-table means you get the first spot going into the playoff in 6th position. And I do feel Atlanta will make history as a very successful first-year team in the stands, in the profit margin, like in the bank statement. They'll be successful there, and they will be successful on the pitch. And that will maybe be the new blueprint of how to come in the league and make a stand and make a name for yourself in your first season. And I think that's what Atlanta is going to do.
All right, fair enough. I've spoken about Atlanta already, so we'll move on to the West. I have Portland in at 6th at the West.
Yeah, me too.
They have the good season, bad season, good season, bad season. I'm not sure whether they consider this a good or a bad season. Maybe they're due for a mediocre season. I never quite know where to peg Portland. There is some pieces there. I never thought they were as good as they were when they won the MLS Cup championship. I don't think they were as bad as they were when they missed the playoffs. So, hell, let's cut it down the middle and make them just a playoff team. I'm not convinced of Porter as an MLS coach, to be honest with you. I'm not convinced of him as a coach, but I think Portland, as I said, the home advantage is significant. They do have some pieces. They're going to have to replace some veteran leadership that had to leave in the offseason, that retired in the offseason. So I just kind of see a mediocre, kind of nothing season up there for them, which, they haven't had one of those yet. So you might as well start now.
I agree with you. Portland, number 6 in the Western Conference for the exact same reason. And we're actually a ways off now from their appearance in the MLS Cup final. It's a year and a half ago almost. And a lot of things have changed in the league since then.
Precisely. All right, let's move on to the 5th place. And it gets a little bit fuzzy between 6 and 3 or 6 and 2, even within the East. I have a clear number 1, and we'll get there in a minute. But I'm going to pick DC United as 5th, as my 5th place team. I think they're a solid team. I think they're a team that could finish as high as 3rd or 2nd. They could even get that bye, the way they finished the season. But the way they started the season causes pause too. There's not a lot of sort of high-end game-changing skill there, but there's a lot of depth and a lot of consistency across the roster. So I do think that they're a solid playoff team. And again, I'm going to put them in at 5th just because I like the 3 teams above that I've picked, or 4 teams above them a little bit more, but I do think that they could finish as high as 2nd. So the DC United is my pick for 5th in the East this year.
NYCFC as my pick for 5th in the Eastern Conference. Duane, I feel like the Pillow experiment will take in, like I mentioned earlier on the show, will finish in the summer, but what they will get to take his place will be successful, finish 5th in the Eastern Conference, going into the playoff and maybe having some success in the early rounds in playoff. That's possible. NYCFC, number 5 in the East for me.
All right, they got to. It's hard not to have any more, or it'd be hard not to improve upon their playoff success in 2016 when they lost 7-0 to TFC.
Yes, exactly. Well, what's the adage in MLS? You have to learn how to lose in the playoffs before winning, and they learned a lot last year.
Yeah, they learned how to lose. Well, just like TFC learned a lot by getting their ass handed to them in Montreal the year before they beat them.
And Montreal getting their ass handed to them by Dynamo before winning one round against Toronto, and then before going on a run last year. So yeah.
There you go. All right, let's move to the West. My 5th place team in the West is the surprise team in the West last year, Colorado. I do see them having to slip back like Kevin does. I don't see them slipping all the way out of the playoffs. I think that they have the ability to turn on that defensive system when they want. I do think it's the right approach to try and get a little bit more offense into it in the start of the season. But I have this hunch that they're probably going to be hovering around 7th or 8th in July, and then they're just going to switch the tactics and they're going to get into shutdown mode again, and they'll be able to grind their way back up into a playoff position. They believe, I think, that defense wins championship. We've talked about this 1,000 times before. It doesn't in MLS. You need to find ways to score, but I think defense does get you solid playoff seasons, and I believe that they have that strength and that ability to do that. So I feel that they will be a playoff team, just not quite the shocking championship, Supporters Shield championship contending team that they were in 2016. The Colorado Rapids, 5th place in the West. Kevin.
For me, it's Vancouver. Vancouver, I do feel, will make the playoff in 5th. And not necessarily the tremendous success of the year, not last year, but the year before. Like, they're not going to be top of and not going to be in the conversation for winning the Western Conference. No. But they will have some success. Freddie Montero combined with Alphonso Davies will bring some success for the Whitecaps. I do feel that what we saw yesterday was what the potential could be of this attacking duo. And you add other pieces as well. So, for Vancouver, it's a project that changed a lot over the last 3 weeks. And if you were asking me this question 3 weeks ago, they will be out of the playoff and by a lot. Now, I think it is different. We're talking about an attacking core that's a little bit more proven and maybe able to replicate their success of a few years ago for Montero and for Alphonso Davies. Watching a experienced striker in front or close to him or working with him will help him even develop, maybe even quicker, like he may even faster, and will be a success for me for 5th for Vancouver playoff. And who knows, they might get their butts kicked in the CONCACAF Champions League semifinal. We'll see, but still, their success in the quarterfinals will give them some confidence that, look, even though they're young, look what they can do, and they will have the playing time necessary for Davies to get better and for Montero to get his leg back under him in Major League Soccer.
All right, 4th place pick in the East for me is the Red Bulls. Look, they're going to figure it out. They're going to add something in the middle of the season. They still have enough there. I do think that they're going to slip back both by choice. They are choosing to blood some young pups early on to try and make them more battle tested by the time the important part of the season starts. They're willing to give up some points early. I think they're going to start slow based on what we saw over the past 2 weeks in the CONCACAF Champions League, based on changes they've made, but they will get it figured out in time to make the playoffs. Whether or not they can do well in the playoffs, they can, get past that reputation remains to be seen. Certainly, it didn't inspire the way that they played the CCL quarterfinals. That they can figure that out in two-legged tied football. But nonetheless, I do think the Red Bulls are going to be a very solid playoff team in the East without any danger of missing at any point. Yeah. Although maybe they might start a little slowly. So my 4th place pick in the East are the Red Bulls.
That's the exact same one that I have. So the Red Bulls in 4th in the Eastern Conference.
All right, let's move to the West then. I have SKC in at 4.
Let's go quickly. I have the same here, probably for the same reason as you. They're a little better than maybe last year, but it's not a contender for the top spot in the Western Conference. It's not enough to go challenge other powerhouse in the Western Conference, but they're enough to be a little bit better than mid-table.
All right, we're getting into the top 3 now. So in the East, I have the Impact in at 3rd in the East. It's a Piatti's team, and to me, if Piatti goes, and this is the caveat I'll give, and I'll as we're getting long on time, so I'll keep this short. If Piatti gets hurt, they're in trouble. And I think anyone will agree with that. And that goes with anyone's best player. But I think Montreal, especially because of their age and some other factors there, if they lose their talisman, that they might fall down that pretty hard. But I don't see that happening. So I do think the Impact are in for another solid season and are a contending team this year. I have them in at 3rd, Kevin.
And my 3rd and my 2nd are probably interchangeable, like you mentioned earlier. I think from position 2 to 5 for me, there could be changes. But that's where I rank them because maybe my knowledge of certain teams goes along longer and I can maybe handicap certain teams better than other ones. I'll take that caveat. But For me, in third position, DC United. Good luck to Maxime Tissot. Having found a job in MLS with DC United, was a trialist, impressed him enough to have a contract. Will be playing with them this season. I feel that DC United is a team that finally will get back that result they had a few years ago, and then it was a certain deception. But this year, I think with the announcement of the new stadium, there will be a certain revitalization of the support of the team, of the players, and a new identity will continue to be built. And I think we will see a DC United taking advantage of weaker teams in the Eastern Conference to get good results, having a great beginning of the season and continuing. Like, not necessarily a surprise like a Philly last year, but it's kind of like that team for me, where their early success will be carried on over the season and maintain their position in the table, third, fourth, and will finish third, in my opinion, in the end of the season.
All right, in the West, I have the Seattle Sounders in at third. The top three in the West, to me, are interchangeable in many ways. The Sounders, I think that when you look at their overall season and you factor it all together and you sort of put the Siggy situation aside, I think that they are about the third most talented team in the West. They, of course, won in the playoffs, and finishing third in the West means that they could win in the playoffs again next year. This is not a diss of them. It's just where I see them fitting in right now in terms of the overall talent structure. Dempsey, if he can have a great bounce back season, that might propel them higher and might put them into Shield contention. This is a team that has won a Shield before, after all. But right now, if I had to put the money down, it would be to put them at third, Kevin.
Yeah, for me, third in the Western Conference is the LA Galaxy. It's tough to make them a non-playoff team because of history. They've been so good in the past, and it's not necessarily going to change this year. It's a new regime, but the core of player has changed a little bit, got a little younger, got more diverse, and more directed towards the skill set of a Gio, and he's really the core of the team now going forward. A lot of rumors that John Terry and will join the team this summer. Wouldn't be surprised by that move. It does fit with the MO of the LA Galaxy, but I feel still not be as dominant as they were before, but enough to finish third in the Western Conference.
All right, my second place team. This is I think, having listened to all these predictions, the prediction that is going to put us furthest apart. I have the Columbus Crew as my second place team in the East. I think that the Kai Kamara situation last year truly was a poison that has been taken out of the room, and it has allowed what is a very talented team that plays a very has a very good image of itself. It knows what it is. It has a style that it plays. It can be very attractive to watch the Crew as well. I believe that they're going to have a major bounce back season this year, and that they will be contending for the top of the East right up until the end. Although, well, you know who I have left out. I think that I'll talk about them in a second. But yeah, Columbus is my second place team in the East.
The Montreal Impact are my second team in the Eastern Conference. Like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, it's a Nacho type of team. Nacho Piatti will have a great success. He will have support of other players. Matteo Mancosu now signed for 2 years. So the uncertainty after this prior loan contract that was finishing in June is settled. He's a Montreal Impact player for the next 2 years, and that will bring some stability, which is the key term in the Montreal Impact offseason. The addition of Chris Duval and Laurent Simon, both going to add a lot. Well, Laurent Simon has been here, but the play of Chris Duval mixed with Oyongo, Kamara, Cabrera, and Simon makes it for a great backline, one of the best in the league. So they will be able to control the ball a little bit more, so not running as much, not exerting as much energy. And for a team that's a little older, it is the way to go to save some of that energy for late in the season and to have a more consistent season. Not as high, but maybe not as low all across the season will give you great success in a league like Major League Soccer. You get geared up to have a few success peaking late in the season, approaching the playoff in a great way. Second, home field advantage. And I feel like Montreal Impact will be second in the Eastern Conference because, well, Nacho, and when Zamali come, Duane, it will be a shock to the rest of the league how good he could be.
All right. FC Dallas is my second place team in the West. They are, to me, the most talented team in the West, but I think that they are going to structure their season in such a way to try and peak in the playoffs, to really prioritize the playoff run. So that's why I'm putting them second. No other reason than that. It's just a hunch into how they'll structure the season. An immensely talented team across the board in every position. So much respect for what they do in Dallas. They were my MLS Cup, my Supporters Shield pick last year. Got half of that right. So I am hesitant to not pick them in a Supporters Shield race again, other than the fact that I just think they're going to rest players and keep positions, not prioritize winning the Shield this year. Second place, West.
My second place in the Western Conference, Seattle. I feel like they can overcome the potential MLS Cup hangover. I think they're not going to have one. They're going to have a successful season. The Dempsey situation is resolved. So imagine their success late in the season and in the playoffs. Add Clint Dempsey, sorry. Chris Dempsey is a long, long time ago. Clint Dempsey to the situation, and you will find yourself with a successful second place team battling for the top of the Western Conference throughout the season, but just falling short of a Shield discussion, second in the Western Conference for the Sounders.
If they add USL Commissioner Chris Dempsey, they won't be finishing second in the West. That's no offense to Dempsey anyway. It's a friend of mine. All right, first in the East. Okay, it's TFC.
Yeah, we both agree. Yeah, exactly.
They are the deepest team in the conference. Are have the highest top end in the conference. They won the MLS Cup final, Eastern Conference champions, playoff champions right now. Anyway, they picking them to get East is not a shocking pick. It's something that we that should not be considered confusing at all to anyone. TFC, my pick to win the East.
Same for me. I do feel like they have addressed some of the questions or some of the reasoning, but when you lose the MLS Cup in a penalty kick situation, you can't really get closer without winning the damn thing. So how much questions, how much roster worry do you have to actually address? That's the question. They did address the depth aspect, and that is interesting, but they haven't played with the roster enough to make me feel like they're weaker. They actually just consistently kept what they needed to be. They have a new tactical identity, a more movable, more interchangeable formation going forward to adapt to the opponents. This is a theory that both Mauro Biello and Greg Vanney share for the upcoming season, and they have as well last year. If you look how the teams played, it will be successful for TFC. They will have a better result, in my opinions, at home, not having the whole situation like last year. This year, they're settled in a lot better. So I do feel like it's going to be very similar to 2016 without the certain hurdles that they had at some point in the early mid-season mark like last year.
All right. So my pick to win the West is the LA Galaxy. And I think that we're overlooking their overall success, their overall talent level across the board. Gio, I think, is going to have a real breakout season in terms of the top of that team. And I think that, as I said when I talked about Arena earlier, that it might offer them an opportunity to sort of evolve in a different way. So the LA Galaxy win the West to me, Kevin.
And for me, it's FC Dallas. They will replicate their regular season success like last year, even though they're not going to be necessarily putting all their eggs in the supporter shield basket. It's not going to be because they want to and make sure they're not going to rest players just to win the damn thing. No, but it will be a consequence of them rotating and doing the right things with the roster at the right time and still having those results and still having those wins enough to put themselves in a top of the West situation. Supporter shield, I don't know. I feel Toronto, it's going to be their year compared to last year. But I do feel that Toronto and Dallas will be the two best teams in the Eastern Conference in the regular season.
All right, let's take a real quick bump and wrap this up with our overall predictions.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
All right, Kevin. This has been long, so let's do this a little bit rapid fire. We'll start with some of the awards that we have out there, the individual awards. Let's start with the newcomer of the year. Who do you think is going to be the newcomer of the year?
It's a tough question because a newcomer has to be somebody that's new to the league. He could be a very high level of a player, but it's his first year and he could be the winner of that trophy. For me, you were surprised by why I put Minnesota in eighth. I told you Johan Venegas. But there's another player making a comeback in North American soccer, and this time at a top flight level, which we're not necessarily talking about a lot, and that's Miguel Ibarra. I feel that he's going to come with a chip on his shoulder to prove to the U.S. soccer fans, which he was a French player in 2014 for the national team, even though he was playing in the NASL, to show them what he can do. I think he's going to come in and play with a chip on his shoulder and have good enough success. Doing newcomer of the year, you don't necessarily have to be the best player in the league. If you are the best of the new crop, I think he could be that answer. I think Zamali, if he would have come in for an entire season, would be definitely the winner of that. But because he's going to be here only for half a season at the end of June, he's going to be talked about, but the winner will be Miguel Ibarra for me.
All right, I'm going to go. This is a bit outside the box in the sense that it's the least fancied of the DPs that Atlanta brought in, but I think that the third DP that they brought in, Martinez, Joseph Martinez, is going to have a good goal scoring year, and he might be. Well, I think one of the Atlanta guys will win it, is what I'm saying. And I'm going to go outside the box a little bit and pick the third DP that they brought in rather than the more fancied ones. But Martinez is my pick. To win the newcomer of the year. You wanted to have a comeback player of the year. I have a hunch. Yes. I know who it is. So
it's Johan Venegas, because I don't know why there's two Minnesota players in my awards, but even just the fact that they finished eighth is like winning a trophy for them, because they're not going to be last like everybody expected them to be. But Johan Venegas, because of his very, very non-existent success with the Montreal Impact, just a few glimpses here and there, the fact that he's going to be that important and he's going to score that much goal will make him like such a from rags to riches story in just a few months for the perception of people, because they haven't seen him train, they haven't seen the technique, the tactics, awareness, and the actual skills that he possesses on the ball, because he haven't played enough for them to see that. We will this year, and that will be the comeback story of the year, is how Johan Venegas is taking that opportunity to play with a certain freedom and get goals and assists and set of plays and be a key component in the Minnesota attack.
My comeback player of the year pick is Clint Dempsey, because of the narrative that will be around Clint Dempsey coming back from the heart issue last year. Does that mean it's not necessarily maybe the spirit of the award, but it will sort of match the marketing aspects of the award. So I think Clint Dempsey is going to be my comeback player of the year, Kevin.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Yeah, I mean I'm using logic rather than sort of like emotion when I say that, but it makes sense. He was out for a while. He's going to come back from that, have a solid year. I think that the voters are going to want to award that. He's going to be front and center in people's minds. It just makes a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to the defender of the year. I know. Are you going to pick your guy? Are you going to pick him?
Yep, Laurent Simon. Why? Because he's going to play with Chris Duval more consistently, and Duval's going to give him that confidence that, you know what, if it's not me, there's going to be somebody else there, and he can go back to playing when he won Defender of the Year and will replicate the success of 2015 with the Montreal Impact and be the Defender of the Year once again.
All right. Once again, I think Drew Moore is going to be overlooked even on a short list, even though he should have been. But my pick, to be biased for a second, my pick on Defender of the Year is Van Damme. He was just named the captain of the Galaxy yesterday. I do think that his leadership and his advantage of having played in the highest profile team in the league will really translate into the votes at the end of the season. He was close to it last year, so I believe Van Damme will be your Defender of the Year. Rookie of the Year is a tough one to pick. We're kind of grasping here because we really have nothing to play on other than sort of scouting reports. But I'm picking, I'll start. I'm picking the Atlanta kid, Miles Robinson. That's my second Atlanta guy that I have in this, because again, I think Atlanta's going to let a lot of attention. I think playing a tough position like he does will allow him to sort of get the sort of respect of the voters, and I think he's going to play a lot of minutes for them this year. So Robinson, who's widely seen as the most talented and highest ceiling of the rookie class, which the rookie class is hard to peg because it's the college incomers, right? But that's my pick for rookie.
I have really a difficulty choosing Rookie of the Year this year, because of the same reason. So I'm going to side with you and go with your pick, outside of not having one that stands out for me. Because in the Rookie of the Year, outside of having like a fluke years where you have a great rookie like Kyle Lauren, it's a usually a question of who gets more playing time and who's able to just cement their space, their place in the roster that eventually leads to Rookie of the Year. Not necessarily a guy who comes in and scores 28 goals, because that's not what usually college players do when they come into the league after their college then. So for those reasons, I think there's going to be a couple of rookies that are under the radar right now. Then in a few weeks from now, I will be able to tell you more who my Rookie of the Year. So for that reason, I side with you.
All right, this gets into the meat of the ones that everyone wants to talk about. The Golden Boot winner, we'll start with that. Who will be the leading scorer in Major League Soccer? I'll start again. It's Saba.
I know where you're going.
Sebastian Giovinco. Giovinco is going to be in my opinion, he's going to be angry. I think that they're going to play him in such a way where they'll get him out of games in the 60th minute this year, which might seem ironic when I say that, because it might seem like he's going to get less time, but I think that the time he gets on the field will be less. He'll be less hurt, and he'll be able to perform at his best and be able to play those 90 minutes when it matters down the stretch a little bit better this year, because I think TFC is going to manage him a little bit better. So Seba is my pick for the Golden Boot. Kevin, yours?
I'm a nacho man.
Golden Boot. Okay.
I'm gonna be a nacho man. Nacho Piatti will win the Golden Boot, in my opinion. It will be a race to the finish between Seba and Nacho, both feeling upset about the MVP conversation of 2016. Both will be in the running this time around, and both will lay their marks on this season. But Nacho Piatti, with close to 20 goals, I feel this season, will win the Golden Boot because, well, when support's going to come, when Blarim Zamali's going to be here now with Aregi, with Romero back, it takes some of the creating load out of his responsibility and gives Nacho maybe a little bit more time and flexibility to do what he does best, and that's put the ball behind the goalkeeper. And we will see that going very strongly in 2017.
Is there a point us having a conversation about the MVP, or are we both just going to stick with the same guy?
How about ex aequo? How about a tie? No?
Yeah, okay. I'm picking Giovinco to win the MVP. Okay, look, I fully respect Piatti, but there's no way that he's winning the MVP because he won't get the attention of the votes. And I think even you understand that whether he might be your MVP, but I don't think there's a chance that he wins the league MVP because he's really kind of still going to be underappreciated. That's my opinion on Nacho. Seba is not in the same situation. I think he's far more likely to win the competition. Not necessarily, that doesn't, Montreal fans, listen to me carefully. I'm not saying that Kevin's wrong in saying that he deserves to be. I'm saying that.
I haven't said it yet. I'm actually debating choosing Giovinco for those reasons, because rarely do we have the MVP winning the most important trophy.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. So pick Giovinco if you want that, because I think I know where you're going with your overall picks. But that's I'm picking. Okay, fine. We both picked Giovinco, sort of Kevin with a star beside it. Let's go with the domestic cups now. Who's going to win the U.S. Open Cup? This is always a bit of a crapshoot, but nonetheless, we might as well put a team out there because why not?
Why not Chicago? That could be the first, it could be the first success in their quote unquote rebuild or their quote unquote new era. That could be it. U.S. Open Cup success for the Chicago Fire.
All right, I could be right outside the box. I almost in my head, I almost just changed my pick and went with Atlanta just for similar reasons that maybe they might go all in on the U.S. Open Cup, but no. I'm going to go with one of the traditional teams. I think this is Sporting Kansas City. They really like the competition. They're going to get back to it again, and I'm picking SKC to win the U.S. Open Cup. Now, the biggest prediction of all, the most important prediction of all, comes next, Kevin. Who is going to win the Voyageurs Cup?
The Vancouver Whitecaps.
Why?
Because Toronto and Montreal have other plans. Toronto and Montreal are all in to be a winner this year overall in the season, and they will, especially Montreal now without having FC Montreal, they will use the US Open Cup the Voyageurs Cup, sorry. Ooh, that's quite a lapsus here. They will use the Voyageurs Cup as a playing time for French player, to academy players that are with the team and not going to play a lot. So I do feel like Montreal is not necessarily going to prioritize the Voyageurs Cup at all. Not that it's not a good idea when you do have the success of last year in the playoff and you want to look overall this season. If it comes into a week where other plans are more important and because of injury or other roster worry you're not playing your lineup. Well, it's all well and good in the grand scheme of things. That's why I think Montreal and Toronto are not going to have the success of the last few years, and Vancouver will once again raise the Voyageurs Cup.
I'm picking TFC, and the reason I am is because if you look at Bill Manning's history with RSL, he always prioritized cup competitions. They never took them for granted. TFC has the easier touch in the semifinal this year by virtue of winning it last year. They are the number 1 seed, so they will play probably Edmonton in that first round. With all due respect to Edmonton, that is an easier touch, although they've come close a few times, and there's only one year that upset will happen. Should be really ballsy and pick Edmonton to win it. But at any rate, I am going to pick Toronto to win that thing. And I think that, as you say, that Vancouver and Montreal might beat each other up 2 weeks before that final and might make the difference there. So that's why I'm picking TFC to win one major trophy at least. Let's see about a second one. And we're going to start with the Supporters Shield. Kevin, who is your Supporters Shield pick?
Toronto FC will be the winner this year. It's going to be between Dallas and Toronto, for reasons of a little bit more depth. A few terrible teams in the Eastern Conference that will get that Supporters Shield.
Toronto FC is by far the favorite to win the Supporters Shield. It is not biased for us as Canadians. It's certainly not biased for Kevin. For me as a Torontonian to pick them, they are the consensus pick amongst most MLS experts to win the Supporters Shield this year because they have so much depth in every position. They have some of the best top end talent that's avoid any controversy. They have one of the top 3 for sure top end talent players in the league in Sebastian Giovinco. Their top 3 DPs are probably the best combination of 3 DPs in the league. So they are the best combination of both depth and high-end skill that exists in the league right now. They are, on paper, the most talented team in Major League Soccer. That is really weird for a Torontonian, for a longtime TFC fan and observer to say out loud, but they are. They are the best team, most talented team in the league this year. That doesn't mean they're going to win the MLS Cup. Doesn't mean they're going to win the Supporters Shield. Obviously not. The league is set up to be a parity league. Things can happen. Injuries can happen. Hell, Seba could throw a fit in April, Seba could throw a fit in April and demand to get moved in the summer, and Josie could suffer a career-ending ACL injury in May, right? Like, stuff can happen. But nonetheless, right now on paper, it really beggars belief to pick any other team other than TFC to win the Supporters Shield. Based on the other factors, too, are the fact that Dallas and New York are the 2 teams that most people would put up there as potentially winning it, are both going in different directions. New York has unloaded Dax and don't look very good right now. Dallas has openly said that they're prioritizing the playoffs this year. TFC's got to be your Supporters Shield favorite, so I am picking TFC to win a double anyway. Let's see about the third one. Kevin, what is your MLS Cup final?
My MLS Cup final is FC Dallas versus the Montreal Impact in Dallas.
You're going there, but yeah.
Yep, I do feel like if you look at history, the amount of success Montreal Impact were able to get in a playoff situation, either in a cup situation or in the playoffs in the last few years, one of the teams that had the most amount of victories, if you add the 2 years together. It is interesting to see Montreal going to have a young and old type of roster. If they're able to get hot on a run, not necessarily need to get hot, but in the playoffs, they do have key players, very talented players, and you add Zamali to the mix. Key talented players in the playoff make the difference. And I do not see another team that will have as much. And there is another team as well, but all the combination of the talent, the success, we've been there before. The last year of Patrice Bernier, win it for Patrice. It's going to become a hashtag at the end of the season. Those type of momentum, when it gets on a roll, it's hard to stop. And Montreal this time around will carry that momentum up until their presence in the MLS Cup final.
There's no doubt that the people that we've talked to, that the Impact are either over evaluated by Canadian observers or under, and that includes myself, because I picked them third and said that they were contenders. And Rudy Schuler picked them to make the MLS Cup final, and Kevin just picked them to make the MLS Cup final. So the Canadian observers of this league are all high on the Impact. The American observers we've talked to are not, and that's an interesting sort of view. They've been picked out of the playoffs by a couple of different people. a couple different profiles I've
Yeah,
seen
but
out
they were
there.
picked
So
out of the playoff last year and the year before and the year before. They've always been picked out of the playoff for the American contingent of the analysis and the analyst, I could say.
it's just an interesting observation. So that's something to say. Look, my MLS Cup final, I think that we're going to be back on the freezing shores of Lake Ontario again. TFC they're all in, and they are good. We saw it last year. There is no questions about this team anymore. This is not your big brother's TFC. So I am picking TFC, and I think that the team that they will be playing is I'm going back and forth between the top three in the West on this one. I can make an argument for any of them, but just for the fun of it, I'm going to say it's a rematch completely across the board. So we're going to have the Battle of the Lakeshore Part 2.
Yeah, we're going to have the 401 Derby, the two Southwest Derby first, and then, in your opinion, we're going to have Toronto, Seattle Part 2.
Yeah, that part exactly. That's going to be what I think it's going to be. So TFC v Seattle once again in Toronto. Going to really irritate all those American observers that don't like to be cold. But nonetheless, we're going to be all huddled up at the Kia training ground next December, waiting for another media availability in that bubble. So that's my pick for MLS Cup final is right there. So,
and
Kevin, this hour and a half show has to end with this. Who are your 2017 MLS Cup champions?
My 2017 MLS Cup champions are the Montreal Impact, winning the cup for Patrice Bernier on the road in Dallas, hostile environment. But the warm Dallas weather, well, especially compared to what Montreal could, it's going to be in a dome if it's in Montreal. But the warm Dallas weather will be very useful to the old legs of the Montreal Impact, and they will prove everyone wrong. Age is just a number. It's how you play that counts. And for that reason, the Montreal Impact will be your 27. It's the first time I ever do this. But in 2017, the Montreal Impact will be MLS Cup champions, Duane. Back to back. It's coming to Canada.
All right, well, that is a hot take. I will give you that. This isn't a hot take, although it should be. They built the house on Lakeshore for the Reds. The Reds, yes, I'm picking TFC to win or trouble. I don't know why, and it terrifies me to do that, but they're the best team. They are the best team on paper. Doesn't mean it will happen, but I believe that. I believe that they would be better than most people thought they would be last year. I almost picked them to win the cup last year. This is not me being biased. This is me being logical. I cannot make an argument, and trust me, I have tried for a week to make an argument in my head to not pick TFC to win. They have to be the favorite, and they have to own that, and I think they do own that, and I think that TFC fans should embrace that. They should embrace being the favorites this year because they are. There are other teams that are very good, but TFC is the favorite. They are the consensus best team in Major League Soccer right now. Get used to it, Toronto.
Yep. Let that sink in for a second.
All right. As always,
I have
Kevin.
a little very not pleasant feeling, like a little lower than my stomach. It doesn't sit well, but it's hard to digest.
It is hard to digest for the Montrealer, but nonetheless, we'll see how this plays out. All right, I will put a post up there that you can retweet and save and all that junk if you want with that says TFC wins the treble, and you can all hold on to it and throw it back in my face if it doesn't happen. But nonetheless, that has been our prediction show, 90 minutes of it. Oh, yeah, and I did a show this morning as well. So I've been podcasting all morning. So on that note, Kevin, I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let you, as always, say goodbye.
It starts tonight, Minnesota at Portland. And you know what else starts this weekend? The entire MLS season, yes. But on Sunday night, late Sunday night, the debut edition will drop on the network. The MLS post-game show, it's back, hosted by yours truly. And we want your feedback this year. You have all weekend long after your team has either won big, lost big, tied big. You don't care. Something happened. You want to talk about it. You have something you want to get off your chest. MLS postgame show at gmail.com. Your voice will be read on that show. It's recorded very late on Sunday, so you have up until late Sunday to send in your feedback on the games of the weekend. It starts Sunday, 1 a.m. Will be available around 1:30 on the network and available for your commute on Monday mornings. The MLS Postgame Show. Send your comments to mlspostgameshow@gmail.com. For Duane Rollins, I am Kevin Laramee. Enjoy your MLS games this weekend. And until next week, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.